If you like that feeling of just constantly in that high stress, high emotional environment, there's nothing more. And there's really nothing more incredible in this world than being a creator, than actually creating something cool.
Create something out of nothing is, there's nothing like that. It's super cool. Tell us about yourself, man. And tell us about the firm and give us everything we need to know.
Sure. So Philo Ventures has been around for 4 years, roughly. And we started it. I'd been doing a bunch of kind of random projects with a few different groups, with the Gardner Company and with some other partners. And we decided it would make sense to kind of try to capture some of that value creation in something a little bit more formal. So it started from a lot of chaos. And we formalized. I was able to bring over some incredible partners, operating partners. Corey Cousins is one of our partners that has some experience on the VC side, and then a good friend of mine, Greg Whitehead, came over on the development side, the real estate development side, and we kind of started it late in 2020, which was an interesting time to start something like this. And over the last 4 years, we've focused a little bit of what we're doing and the strategies that we're pursuing, and brought on a lot of incredible team members. And now Philo is, 25 plus strong of direct employees and about 180 portfolio company employees. And it's been incredible. We've had a blast.
Well, your model is really interesting because it's like a studio, it's venture, you're kind of covering the whole thing. Like, explain how your model is different from like a standard VC fund.
I think on the outside looking in, it looks pretty undisciplined. And for a period of time, it's actually been pretty undisciplined. I think over the last few years, the last couple of years especially, we've been honing in on exactly what our investment thesis is and what our kind of value thesis is. And really, it comes down to our belief that value creation can, where we like to play is the very, very early stage. And there was a lot of VC firms out there and others. And 2020 was a great time to go and raise money, and we chose not to.
Yeah.
We chose to kind of just go the scrappier studio route.
Wasn't that wild when everyone was like, literally everyone I knew was launching a fund? I mean, that's an exaggeration, but it's wild.
Yeah.
Like, it was crazy how many funds were being
incredible
created.
Amounts of money being deployed at that time. And for us, we kind of felt like there was an opportunity to just be scrappy. My background is a little bit on bootstrapping things, and that's where I'm most comfortable. I'm not super comfortable taking capital from individuals, but we do have incredible capital partners with the Gardners and with others. And it's mostly kind of family office money is what we function under. But that's where we got a little bit of that traction from was early stage in 2020, and we kind of have this weird diversified portfolio. Again, we call it diversified. Others could probably call it a little bit undisciplined, but where we have the stability of some of those real estate assets that we pursue, and then really where most of our activity is, both from a capital deployment standpoint and from an employee standpoint, is on our studio side.
Yeah. Tell us about the real estate side of things.
Yeah. So
does that come from Chem?
A little bit, but Chem does a lot of, Chem and Christian have done incredible over the last 50 years. A lot of it is right down the fairway kind of real estate development, corporate campus development. And, they've recently within the last, 5 or so years gotten more heavily involved in residential and some of these other spaces. Where Philo operates, Philo Development, the real estate side really is more on the early stage, which is consistent with what we do on the studio side as well, which is we do a lot of early stage land partnerships, community development, large plots of land. And one of our big projects right now that we're working on is about 4,500 acres just outside of Heber, which is large community development. And
what are you doing with that one? That's a 4,500 acres.
So it's a couple thousand units, 2,000 or 3,000 units, commercial space, community space. It's a beautiful piece of land. Right now we're in the middle of entitlement, and that's a lot of the activity that we do at the Philo level is that early stage utility acquisition, entitlement, those kinds of things. And then a lot of times when we start going vertical with the projects, we'll bring on groups that have a little bit more experience on that vertical side and partner with them to help bring some of those projects to reality.
What were you doing before Philo?
So probably for the prior maybe 5 to 7 years was just a bunch of random things. So we were doing, I was involved in a handful of just unique, weird projects. A lot of it was with the Gardner company.
Mm-hmm.
If it wasn't down the fairway, I was spending time helping them out on some of the projects that they had there. And then prior to that, I was an attorney, and it was miserable. I was not a good attorney.
Everyone says that. Like,
yeah, you wonder why anybody goes into that industry.
Yeah, what makes it so miserable? Just the hours,
I had the
clients.
I had the best attorney job, and it still was. For me, it just wasn't creative. I was spending a lot of time doing transactions, and it just didn't. It was a lot of work, and oftentimes you just didn't feel like you could flex that creativity bone a little bit there.
It'd probably be fun if you were like a lawyer for the mafia or something.
I think there's probably certain areas of law that would
be fun.
Than what I chose. Yeah.
I mean, you'd probably die or get killed from it, but it'd be fun while it lasted.
Yeah.
It'd be very cool. So you come to Philo, and what you guys are doing is really interesting. I'm not sure that you're super well known in Utah. Is that intentional to kind of keep a low profile?
We just don't. There's not a lot of startup studios in Utah. Like I said, we play largely in the family office space from a capitalization standpoint. Typically, what we do is we'll take any of our projects to the point where they need capital, and then we'll go out to our close networks and we'll invite them to participate in whatever project we happen to be doing. And whether it's a hotel that we're buying, or whether it's a piece of land that we're doing, or whether it's one of our studio projects that need capitalization. We're starting to get more and more active from an external kind of messaging standpoint. We recognize that there's a benefit, particularly with our studio companies, to having a little bit more of exposure. And so over the last 12 to 18 months, we've started putting into play a little bit more of an outreach. And I think you'll see more of that hopefully throughout 2025.
So the most fascinating part of what you do is decide on what to build inside the studio. How does that all come about?
Yeah. So in the early stages, and it's still probably similar today, but we would all just kind of sit around and throw a lot of bad ideas on the wall, and just we'd have these idea fests every quarter, and you'd get 50 or 60 ideas. Most of them were just garbage, really dumb ideas, and a lot of them were contributed by me. You would just start doing the validation process and identifying whether there's a significant enough pain or problem that needs to be solved, and then if we have the capacity to build a solution relatively quickly. And so that's where a lot of the early stage ideas that we had. Now we do a lot more outreach. We work with design partners, and we'll go into firms and other companies and say, where's your pain points? And let's see if we can't identify whether there's a solution that could be there. And then on occasion, we'll have individuals that are wanting to participate in the entrepreneurial process. They have ideas, but maybe they're not wired in a way where they bet it all on black, and they want a co-founding partner to work with. And so they'll approach us with some ideas, and we'll take it through that same validation process.
How big's the team?
About 25.
So that's a big team.
Yeah. I mean, the truth about studio, when we started really small. We thought, boy, it can just be 4 or 5 of us, and we'll hire as we need. And what we've learned in the studio space is you have to do it right. You have to have marketing individuals, and you have to have engineers, and you have to have product people, and they have to be passionate about the ability to start something up and then kill it if it's a bad idea and move on to the next one. And it just, to be able to get the kind of cadence that we try to hit, just takes a little bit larger team.
Yeah, 25 is incredible. That's like a pretty impressive startup number.
Yeah, well, it's an incredible group. Probably of that 25, 5 of them are on the development side, but the vast majority of them are studio.
Okay, that makes sense. And then once an idea starts gaining some traction, once the product's been the MVP, all that type of stuff, how do you find a CEO? How do you find a leader for these companies?
Yeah, that founder in residence process is pretty critical for us. We're on an 8-week cadence. So every 8 week, the train leaves the station with a proof of concept. We go through a 6-month validation process from there. And then after we get through that so we're holding it pretty close to that 6 months. After that 6-month process, if it looks like we've got enough traction, then we'll go into this build phase or this launch phase. And at that point, we're out there recruiting for a founder in residence. And we're in this just incredible place here in Utah where you have, it almost seems genetic, where people have this predisposition towards entrepreneurship, but situationally, they just maybe can't pursue it. Maybe they've got a family, they've got kids they need to feed, and they have a wife that is saying, you need to have something stable.
Mm-hmm.
And they just don't have that risk profile that allows them to pursue entrepreneurship the way that maybe they would like to. And so we haven't had an issue yet in being able to find incredible people that are incredibly entrepreneurially minded, wanting to come and say, let me participate. If you've got a plan or you've got a business that has gone through some of that early stage validation, it's ideal if we find somebody that's in industry. So if we're doing InsurTech or something else, but even if we can't, we've oftentimes found some of those incredible founders and residents that have been able to take those companies to the next stage. And it's critical for us. We a lot of studios you'll see fall into that trap where they'll start a company, it starts getting traction, and they say, well, let's just redeploy all of our resources to this company. And I think that a lot of studios have been successful in just morphing into that company. We made the conscious decision that we wanted to be a studio that continually built and that continually created new companies. And so we rely heavily on being able to bring in third parties and other employees that can come on board and take a co-founding spot and take the company to the next level.
So you're kind of interesting in that a lot of startups or entrepreneurs would, pitch an idea, and, I'm sure you do this too, but on the studio side, they almost need to pitch you individually that they should lead this company, right? Or how does that work? Like, are you getting like people pitching you like, hey, would be good for this entrepreneur residence? Do you go out and find it? How does that work?
In a perfect world, we'd have a bigger network of individuals that are coming to us, pitching and saying, hey, I want to be the next one. Right now, it's mostly outreach, where we have a company that looks like it's nearing ending our validation stage. And we know we need to bring somebody on that has some specialty around this area or has passion around this area that wants to do it. And then we're out there doing outreach. We've been lucky because we have a relatively connected group of individuals right now that can tap into some of the local talent relatively quickly. But in an ideal world, we'd have more of an intake process where individuals are coming to us saying, let me know the next time you've got something coming up.
Yeah. Are you industry agnostic in the ideas and companies?
Yeah, when we started from the beginning, our philosophy was, general business principles went out. And we ended up needing to be a little bit industry agnostic. I like industry, and maybe it's ADHD, maybe it's something else, but I like just being able to go and explore brand new things. And we like being able to kind of pivot and adjust as macroeconomic environments change. And, but we do have parameters specifically on our studio. That 8-week release cycle means it's going to be pretty hard to do a CPG company in that 8-week release cycle. And so over time, we found, and then you have the introduction of AI that's kind of introduced more B2B SaaS, really fits that model relatively well. That doesn't suggest that if we had something that came outside of that we wouldn't pursue it. It just is that train leaving the station every 8 weeks kind of forces certain industries to be a little bit more difficult to attain.
Yeah. Is it like, what type of models? Are you talking like mostly SaaS models coming out of there? Are you talking like, so you think it's mostly SaaS?
The vast majority of what we're doing now. So we'll release 6 companies next year in 2025. Or at least we'll put it through our validation stage. We'll have an attrition throughout that process. Failure is very much baked into our model.
Yeah.
And you'd see 5 of those 6 probably B2B SaaS.
What do you think the future of SaaS is? It's going through an interesting period right now, given, everything AI is doing, and a lot of people are going to a consumption model rather than a subscription model, which is still SaaS, but it's a different way to do it, right? How are you thinking about the SaaS?
And maybe it's short-term thinking, but we have found this area where you can build. VC is not looking at some of these businesses that are solid businesses that have $50, $100, $200 million valuations. It just doesn't fit that VC power rule. And so we think that there's still a lot of running room in those more specialized AI products, more specialized B2B true SaaS products that are out there. I do think that we're seeing a shift from the subscription to where you have to really provide per unit value.
I think the consumption model is fairer. it's fairer for both the customer and the company.
I think it keeps you honest
Yeah.
as a provider of services to say, we never want to be the group that just gets somebody on an auto pay process and then they find out 8 months later that they've been paying for something.
Yeah.
I just don't. Our mantra is that we create value, and that doesn't feel like a very valuable enterprise.
Yeah. Yeah. When you find out like, I've been paying what? Do we ever use that? You know, like when you're in those companies, like, do we ever use that software we're
Totally.
paying, you know, X amount for every month? Everyone's like, I don't use it. It's like, dang it.
Yep.
We screwed ourselves. So I love the consumption model for sure. How are you thinking about AI? What type of cool AI things are you guys building, seeing?
So we like AI. I think it's been, I don't know that without AI, we'd be able to as easily hit that cycle that we feel like we need to hit to be able to produce the results we're looking for. It's becoming much easier to get involved in. So that moat isn't quite as broad or deep as what maybe it was before on the development side of things. And so it really pushes you. If you're going to go the AI route, you've got to show an ability to provide real value and provide something that's unique value, that you can't just go to a language model and just type the question in or just drop the document in. And so a lot of training is going on with our engineering group to be able to say, all right, one of our products is an insurance policy checking product. Incredibly unsexy, right? But a valuable resource for insurance brokerage firms. And what we're finding is a lot of that time is training those models and teaching those models and getting them very specialized. So I think specialization in AI is going to be where the value is, at least for us, and making it so it's not just a ChatGPT wrapper that you're throwing out there.
Yeah, so many are just ChatGPT wrappers. Yep. Which is, you know, there might be a reckoning there at some point, because you really do have to, if you got to build something that you have an advantage and some sort of moat in. Otherwise, you know, it just doesn't work.
It's short-lived. For sure.
It's certainly short-lived. When has this model worked? I'm trying to think. Like, studio models certainly worked. I believe maybe the most famous example is Uber.
Mm-hmm.
Uber came out of a studio, that Garrett Camp's studio. I can't remember what it was called. What other companies like that high of a profile that have come through studios?
You just see a lot of them transition. There's a lot that are focusing on, the various models are based off of some different formulaic differences. So you've got a couple in Europe that do more of like a cohort process, where we're doing every 8 weeks. They may say, we're going to line up 10 and we're going to do 10 in 2025. And we find that in doing those kinds of processes, you have to have a lot more resources. You have to deploy them all at once, where we kind of have a rolling ability to just roll a resource on and off of projects. There's a number of them that will be hyper focused in the not necessarily tech transfer space, but corporate innovation space. So you see some of these studios that will go in and they will sit down with a company and say, let's just be your innovation partner. There's quite a few that have had success in that way, but a truly agnostic studio is a little bit difficult, frankly, to pull off. And I think the only reason it's working for us is because of the discipline around cadences and making sure that you just always are doing. It's easy to get caught on something you're excited about and let everything else drop and find that you're not filling that funnel continually.
Yeah. That's a huge challenge. So it's an interesting model. It's worked a lot of the times. What are some of the companies that have come out of yours that you're super excited about?
So we have some neat. The interesting about our model is it works whether you're doing development or whether you're doing studio, or another area that we focus pretty heavily on lately has been in hospitality, and that's one of our areas that came out of studio. We never strategically said we're going to do a hospitality play, but in 2020 we started seeing some shifts in the way that hospitality was working. We started a company out of the studio that was hospitality based, and that's now transitioned to being one of our focus verticals to where we do acquisition and hospitality. We've seen some success there. We've got a number of businesses that over the last year have kind of been in various stages of our studio. We've got a company called Keezy that's in the car dealership space or used car sales space. It's kind of essentially like a Carvana without the burden of the assets being owned. It's a partnership dealership program. They've seen some real traction. They've actually spun out of our studio now, which is our model. After 18 months of starting from validation all the way to spin out, we expect them to go, and we send them off we're basically high school, and they go to college, and maybe they get capital that helps them push through that stage and things like that. We have offerings in aviation tech. We've got a company that does airport landing management and is positioning itself to help out with when there's drone automation that's happening and being able to do conflict avoidance and conflict checking. And then we have a bunch of projects in queue in various stages of launch and validation and spin out in our portfolio right now.
So if somebody wanted to reach out to you, what would they be reaching out for, and how would they do it?
Yeah, I think that the biggest intake we have right now is those individuals that are super early stage that want a co-founding partner. That's not a big portion of what we've done in the past, but it's an area I think that there's some need and some value that we can provide. Certainly those that are interested in founder and residence kind of programs, I think would be valuable. Those that are interested from a capitalization perspective in seed beyond, we do oftentimes do a private subscription on some of these companies and saying, let's go ahead and just draw some individual capital on it. Those that are interested, again, we do a lot with family offices right now. We helped co-found a group called the Utah Family Office Network, which is a big collection of family offices that get together on a regular basis. And so those that might have interest in that would be somebody that we'd want to talk to as well. And then we're always looking for talented people. It's a unique person that wants to go and do. You almost have to be schizophrenic because you have to, you have to be pursuing a project. And once you see that the data is saying it's not there, you have to be able to kill that project and just move on to the next one. And we're finding that personality, it's just hard. It's hard to kill something that you just spent 3 or 6 months spending full time on. And there's this prevailing wisdom in entrepreneurship that you just have to give it grit constantly and just keep banging your head against the wall. And that's just not how we operate. If we're not getting traction, we move on to the next project.
Yeah, that's super interesting. So it sounds like maybe one of the challenges that you face is how do you get that pipeline more settled, or more people in your pipeline for the founders and residents, people who could lead these companies? That's an interesting challenge.
It is.
That's actually a really interesting challenge.
Yeah, you have to find people who, like I said, have that entrepreneurial bone, that are willing to take a risk. I mean, we pay salaries, but they're not. A lot of these people are taking a pay cut to come and do it.
You're still being very entrepreneurial.
They're taking a meaningful chunk of the company, and we need to do that. Not only does it incentivize the individual, but when we go through those VC rounds, we can't have weird cap table things that are happening. The pool of employees that are going to retain with the business have to have a meaningful enough stake in the business to work out. By the time we get to the seed round or post seed round, we're at 30-40% of the company, and we'll continue to take dilution throughout the process as we get to the later stages. So finding somebody that wants to do that wants to be scrappy and entrepreneurial, that's willing to kind of sacrifice through that process, but also needs and wants to have a little bit of stability with healthcare and with, a stable paycheck and a place to work and a bunch of resources that have done this time and time and time again. I think that's pretty attractive to a number of individuals.
Oh, it's very cool. How important is Utah? Like, do they have to live in Utah, or do you try to recruit people from around the country, around the world, and they have to move to Utah if you recruit them? How does that work?
We've done mixed, and we've had mixed results. We're pretty passionate that in office is powerful. The collaboration that seems to happen in office is something that we haven't been able to replicate in another way yet. But that's not to say that we haven't also seen successes from individuals that were telecommuting or working from home.
Where are you guys based? Where's the office?
Lehigh. We're just right across the freeway from Adobe, and in that Nature Sunshine building.
Yeah, right in the heart of things.
Yeah,
it's very
good spot.
Cool. Yeah. It's a great spot. We have our event space there. It used to be office, but we couldn't work out of there because there's too many events.
Yeah.
Well, seriously, congratulations on everything you're doing. I highly recommend people check out your website. It's Philo.Ventures.
Philo.Ventures.
Right.
Yep.
And I love the model. I think it's really, really fascinating. That, again, like the most interesting problem you have is like just finding the right founder to match the right idea and the right startup. And you kind of need that founder to be passionate about the problem that company's going to solve, right?
Yeah, it doesn't. We played around for the last 4 years with when do you bring on that founder? Initially, we brought him on really early, too early. And then what we were doing was pulling them out of the marketplace. The stability we were promising just wasn't there. And then they were so early in the process that the equity that we were providing them didn't feel like it was the right amount of equity because they truly were more of that day one co-founder, which would generally net you more than the 20% of, which is typically what we offer our co-founding founders in residence. If you go too late, now all of a sudden you've got, when you go to capitalization and you're out there trying to pitch to VCs that you're ready for, somebody they're looking at this co-founder and saying they've only been here for 6 months. We feel uncomfortable putting money towards this venture because we're really putting money on the team and the team hasn't been in place for long enough. We think we've got it at the right point where they still have that, but they have to have the passion. The only reason the studio works is because our founders and residents are passionate about what they do. We have an incredible team that can get it to that point. And I don't want to discount our internal team that we have. They absolutely are incredible at what they do. But the success for that individual studio project is really down to that founder and residents that we brought on, just like the success of any early stage startup is.
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming in, man.
Thanks
for explaining what you're doing. And I highly recommend people check you out. We got to have you back in as more and more come out of there because it's such a fascinating model. And what you're doing is, I love it. I think it's fun. You got to be having fun every day. It
is by far. And now I'm going from attorney. So the bar was pretty low.
Anything
is
fun.
But I would say by far it's the most incredible environment. You get the highs of and the lows of new startup every single day. And if you like that feeling of just constantly in that high stress, high emotional environment, there's nothing more. And there's really nothing more incredible in this world than being a creator, than actually creating something cool.
Create something out of nothing is, there's nothing like that. It's super cool. Thanks, man.
Awesome. Thank you.